You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and an awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello and welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and I am here with GP Walsh, executive contributor to Decide to Transform. And we are coming to you with at least one show here every month, which will release in the middle of the month. Now, GP joined me last month for a couple of dynamic shows about the role of men and the role of masculinity, particularly here in the 21st century. In a hyper masculine culture, a culture full of all kinds of violence and misinformation and suffering. And we had a couple of brilliant shows. So thank you all for tuning in. We looked at how we got here. And we also looked at where we go from here in 2 shows on Decide to Transform. Now, GP is a master spiritual teacher and has studied various techniques of meditation, energy healing, and emotional clearing throughout his life. And he is a wonderful, wonderful person to speak to. I'm looking forward to just delving right into it, GP. Welcome back.
Thanks, Tomas. It's great. I so look forward to this this little spot we have every month where we get together and do this.
And it's so much fun because those of us listening here, those of y'all listening, we haven't really scripted much of anything. This is going to be fairly off the cuff and fairly spontaneous. So I love this. And GP, last time we were looking at the question of the role of men and masculinity, and those shows are really for everyone because here we are as a society, and we talked about that and where we're going to go from here. And as you think back to where we left off, do you have any comments that are left over maybe from last time?
Well, where are we going? You know, partially we're going on a ride that we can't do much about, right? We're gonna have, and a lot of it has to do with, well, for me, it's 100% about being present. This is a spiritually demanding time, and just kind of new age philosophies or feel good philosophies, they just aren't cutting it anymore. They're just not making it. When it's time to show up and you need a meal, somebody hands you a snack, and that's basically what a lot of these kind of semi-spiritual uh, traditions are. And in good times, they're good, they're helpful, right? But do they stand up against the kind of assault that spirituality is under right now? And for the most part, they don't. I have friends of mine. There's a phrase I heard once called "they're scummies," socially conscious unless money's involved. And I have a couple of friends, lefties, and they're talking about the vaccine and Pfizer and all of that. And I said, well, Pfizer is quite questionable. We're paying, and all this sort of thing. He says, yeah, but I got stock in Pfizer. I'm making a lot of money. And I just, my jaw dropped. Right now, where's the integrity in that? Well, there isn't any. there isn't any. And this is a very smart, very intelligent, very dedicated guy. He's been an activist. And to see that kind of thing just really threw me for a loop. The kind of philosophies that that are kind of nice. My teacher calls them the cappuccino awakenings. You can't sit around sipping, right? But the times are demanding us to grow up. They're demanding us to really mature and step into a whole different level of power. I'm very interested in what that means for men because I am one. I also speak what it means for women because they're far more powerful than anyone has realized, but it's a different kind of power.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It isn't the same at all. It's a
Hmm.
much more broad and expansive power, whereas men is very direct. Deal with it while it's in front of you, kind of thing. And it's going to take both of those kinds of approaches, both that kind of a strength.
Hmm.
But the the tribe we have to defend now is the whole planet.
Okay. Hmm.
We can't go to nationalities or patriotism or any of that stuff. Now, Einstein referred to nationalism as the measles of mankind.
Yes.
And it's so to to throw the boundaries away, there aren't any, right? We're going to have to embrace the entire planet and everyone as brothers and sisters, and then have that same kind of protective urge for everyone and the planet. Um, that we right now that kind of verve and enthusiasm we're exerting for a political party or my country or something like that. All of which is, I mean, we've outgrown it. It's obsolete.
Right. It's obsolete, and that we have so many people that refuse to accept that obsolescence. So here we are. Now, is this what you mean by this being a spiritually demanding time?
Yeah, because it's very easy to fall into judgment and even hate,
Mhm.
right? You see somebody storming the Capitol, or a character like Trump, which Chris Hedges refers to as being vomited up by the, by by the circus, a buffoonish character, and people just deeply uh, involved and and passionate about that kind of stuff. When you stand aloof from it and look at it, and you see the huge mistake that it is, the utter deception of the whole thing, you can become bitter, you can become angry, you can take another side, right? We're right and you're wrong, um, which is spiritually immature. And that's exactly what we've been doing, and we're suffering the consequences of this back and forth. So to be spiritually mature is, how do we find a place that is filled with love and compassion, and yet is powerful, is not being bowled over, is that speaks truth to power, where need be. Um, where do you find that, right, in ourselves? That's the spiritual demand to me, and it's a big one. As Christ put it, wiser than serpents and harmless as doves. I mean, how do we find that space in us that is just it's invincible, and yet it's infinitely gentle? And to me, that's the demand. Right.
Right. Yes, and it seems to me that that is it's wonderful for people to recognize that, but it's difficult. It's a difficult balance for people to strike. Now, last time we were talking about in the context of men, of course, the shows apply equally to women, but in the context of men, so much struggle with that, so much struggle with that balance. So if that's the challenge, what's the solution to that?
Well, the solution, I've found in my personal experience, uh, and I've been doing this for a very long time,
Mhm.
is that the way to find that balance starts with a deep self acceptance, uh, an acceptance of yourself, acceptance of your foibles, an acceptance of your mistakes, an acceptance of all the things you've done that have been stupid or cruel. Um, and and really being willing to be present with that to a degree where you end up accepting human nature, your own human nature, because this is the human condition, right? And we don't do things because there's no such thing as an evil person. uh, uh, s- uh, I mean, somebody's evil if they're doing what I don't like. That makes that makes them evil. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, "Boy, I'm really going to mess up people's lives today." Nobody does that, right? They're doing what they think is of the most benefit within the context of what they know to be good and useful and love. So, if me wiping out another country to get their resources is okay for me, right? Because my value system is profit above all else. I don't have a guilty conscience about that, right? I'm not aware. I have cut myself off from the empathy that lets me feel somebody else. And that only happens because we've cut ourselves off from the empathy that allows us to feel our own pain, our own suffering, our own traumas that end up surfacing as that. Um, and so we can look at the board of directors of a company that moves a factory out of Detroit and completely devastates an entire area of the country, and everybody in it, the entire community, right?
Yeah.
So that their stock prices will go up and they can reduce their labor costs. Now we can look at that from a value system that says this is insane. This is this benefits nobody but a handful of people, and I can say put a value system on say that my my value system is superior to that one because it would not do that. It would not create that kind of havoc or that kind of suffering for people. Now, I can see that as is an obviously objectively better value system, right? But
Yes.
they don't, right? They don't see it that way because they're, and so what we have is these conflicting stories, right?
Hmm.
And we don't realize that when we cut ourselves off from ourselves, and it starts very early, and unfortunately, not or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how we look at it, it happens to every single one of us. It's a very
Right.
fundamental thing. It happens early on. You are yourself, innocent, pure, unpretentious kid, right? Just doing what kids do. No judgments, no nothing, just reach for the shiny object, run and chase the ball, whatever you're going to do, right? Completely innocent, completely yourself. Now, what happens when your tribe, parents or whatever, school, start saying, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't think that. You shouldn't feel that. Right now, this is like world class trauma. Right, you're totally vulnerable. You're totally helpless. Right, you have to do what they say, and yet you can't not be yourself.
Very true.
So it
Yeah.
becomes it becomes dangerous to be yourself. And this
Mm.
is the soul fragmentation. This is the disconnection from yourself that happens to every one of us. In order to survive, I have to present a version of me to my environment that isn't me, and I have to keep me buried. That
Right.
is an existential trauma that we all suffer from. It's the original one. And it is out of that that then this personage we create to function within the tribe takes on all the characteristics, completely becomes the tribe. We become unconscious. We just become robotic recreations of what came before. And we will stay that way until some kind of consciousness begins to dawn. And and it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're born into an uber rich family, you'll have a certain view of life, certain expectations about things.
Right.
But you take that same kid and raise them in a poor family in Pakistan, and they will completely conform to that world, and that's how they'll think of themselves, and that's how they'll view their expectations.
Hmm.
So I think we even talked about this for a bit in the last show. Nobody's to blame for this.
Exactly.
These cultures just
Right.
happened, and they get perpetuated. And but the thing is that deep down inside, there's still the real you that wants
Yes.
to get out, right? That wants to express itself and come out inside or different weird ways and all. It can get suppressed in all sorts of ways and come out in men a lot as a midlife crisis.
Oh yeah.
where all of a sudden they feel betrayed by everything. It's like, I don't like anybody I'm with. I don't I don't like my life at all, right? And it's devastating, right?
Right.
But it
Yes.
has that's its origin. That's
Mhm.
where it came from, and that's what I mean by 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 beginning to listen to yourself. And to do that, you have to get through layers of conditioning and fears and traumas and all sorts of stuff that's been put into place to keep you conforming and never have access to these things. And 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 that's what takes away our empathy. It happened to us. We get buried, we get sent to the basement. We don't have any problem doing it to anybody else. We literally become incapable of feeling somebody else's pain. And
Yes.
that's where evil comes from. What we call
Mhm.
evil is just such an absence of empathy that we cannot actually feel the impact we're having on somebody else. And the moment you do, something breaks open inside of you. The moment something just kind of opens up and go, oh my God, I did that to them. I caused them enormous pain and I can't undo it. I remember the
Yes.
times in my life when that happened, when I thought I would get away with something, and all of a sudden I saw the consequences of it. And I just wanted to crawl in the hole and die. It was
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah.
oh my God. But
Yes.
that's the heart breaking open.
Mhm. Right.
The kind of heartbreak we all need. That's not guilt. That's remorse.
Mhm.
Remorse is healing. Guilt is a waste of time. Yeah, yeah. Guilt is imposed to make you obedient.
Yes. Yeah.
Remorse is a genuine insight into the actual nature of things, and it will change you.
Mhm. Right. It will. And, I can relate to some of those examples in my own life where I thought I would get away with something, and clearly it was not meant to happen. The feeling
Yes.
is not pleasant at the time, but yes, it does. It does lead to healing and breakthroughs. And one thing that you've mentioned before that I really love and I want to highlight is the fact that this all just sort of happened to us. It's no one's fault. And people have such a tendency to want to blame. We blame the government for things. We blame the police department for things. We blame the weather, blame, blame. But it's just everything that we inherited from our parents, from our society, and that they inherited from, well, the beginning of
Yep.
time. Yeah.
It's simply the way we've evolved, the way the human body and nervous system has evolved in relationship to the environment, the changing environments, and in relationship to yeah, our expanding intellect, where our capacity for cognitive thought and reason, and like grew. Well, now that's a whole world that never existed before. That this nervous system that's kind of in between, just chasing down wildebeests. And now and now we're writing Romeo and Juliet. It's like I mean, this is a kind of a difficult place to try to navigate. I mean, it's just so extreme that
Mhm.
all of a sudden we're in this position, and um, and on top of that, there's also the spiritual dimension of it, the discovery of spirituality, the discovery of our capacity to envision something beyond, to seek truth for truth's
Yes.
sake, right? Not just not
Yes.
just for the boons, the benefits it brings.
Mhm.
Ask somebody if they would still be so devoted to God if he wasn't going to send you to heaven, if he was just going to leave you here.
Oh, yeah. Leave you
What
here
kind
with
of deal would that
all
be?
right, yeah, with a poor stock portfolio as
With a
well.
poor stock portfolio.
Sorry.
But you know me. That's But for people, it's not God. They want heaven. They want the bennies, right?
Mm,
So it
right.
becomes a business transaction. It's not love. It's not. But our capacity to actually discern truth, beauty, intelligence is like, oh, this is stunning. This is just this is
Yes.
worth pondering for a lifetime,
Mhm.
because it's a different level. Something. has gone beyond the purely instinctual.
Yes.
And this is what we're wrestling with because we're in the middle. The vast majority of the world is in the instinctual still.
Right.
And the instinctual, if you want to use the Kundalini model, it's the three lower chakras. I have a different model, but it's a useful one for that, which is just basic survival, sexuality, pleasure, getting what I need, and status, ego, sense of self, and that's our world. We want wealth, we want health, we want progeny, we want status. That's what runs the world, right?
Mhm.
Sitting right above that, the energy in between that and the spiritual transcendence is the heart. Something in
Okay.
the heart breaks open and opens up to the possibility of something beyond the purely animal or instinctual. And this is the phase we're in.
Yes. Right there with the heart breaking open.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I love that analogy of the visual of the chakra system is perfect there.
It
That's
is.
at the root and the sacral chakra. We're getting our cappuccinos and our double cappuccinos, or however people order that. I take mine black, so I don't really know.
Yes.
I don't know.
I can't keep track. I don't know how anybody, one of those baristas, I went the double line with the Triff, half decaf, half cap, three shots. And I said, oh, geez, buddy.
2 pumps with soy, please.
Please.
Please. Yes. Yeah. And, it's so funny because that's where all of these transactions take place, the business transactions, so to speak. And here we are with the heart breaking open right now. And it feels to a lot of people like the world is actually breaking apart. So can you
Yeah.
speak to that collective sense of things just ripping and tearing apart, the feeling of that?
Well, this is beautiful because it builds on what we were talking about before about the spirituality that needs a little bit, it needs some balls, basically.
Yes.
Right, because it does feel as if everything is falling apart. And from the point of view of our regular way of living, our regular way of thinking, all the things that we've just become very comfortable and complacent about, you're damn right it's breaking apart. Right? It has to.
Yes.
If it doesn't,
Yes.
you don't grow. I mean, let's face it. We, like every other creature, we're lazy. We only do as much as we need to do.
Yeah.
And so, if everything's going fine, why in the world would I want to change it? The spiritual path is not something that you choose. I'm still trying to, I'm still trying to put on my, my 3-day crucifixion weekend, and I can't get anybody sign up.
No.
Yeah, nobody. It's not. Rainbows and dolphins and unicorns.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
hardy stuff.
I'm laughing because it's hardy stuff, and people aren't signing up for it. I mean, even if you entice them with a free cappuccino, they're still not signing up for it.
Yes, even if you've got the free giveaway. Yeah, sign up now for 10% off. It's still not enough, right? And we really do have to be driven to the point where the suffering we're experiencing now, right, is great enough that we're willing to endure the discomfort of actual real transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, keeping a theme here, is when you decide to transform.
You do indeed. And only then, in fact.
Only then. Only
yes.
then.
Right. And all of everything leading up to that, of course, can serve a purpose, but it's only then, right, in that moment. And what does that look like for people then? That's all over the map.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's life is going to be different. That's the wonder of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same story, but the characters are all different. And mythologically speaking, it's the hero's journey.
Right.
And that story is so much the human condition. It's exactly what we're talking about right now. That, as Joseph Campbell discovered, the hero's journey is a myth that appears in every single culture that has ever existed.
Right. But yeah, exactly. Bar none.
Bar none.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? the hero starts out innocent, good, everything's wonderful. Something crashes, their life completely falls apart, and they go through a series of ordeals. Eventually, at some point, a mentor shows up. um, they get new powers, new insights, and maybe, mythologically, some new kind of weapons or something. Like Skywalker getting his lightsaber, right? It represented this transformation, and then
Right.
the hero goes back to the community to bestow on the community the bounty of the wisdom that has been acquired on the journey. And so there's this beautiful falling away ordeal and reimmersion. And this is the theme. This is what everybody's experienced. Nobody chooses the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
Nobody says, "Oh yeah, take my perfect life away, please."
Right.
I'll sign up. I'll sign up for that. But it is everybody's. It is everybody's destiny sooner or later.
Mhm.
Right? And once it happens, if you are aware of that, um, if you are aware that this is actually what's happening, something inside you can surrender to it. But if you keep thinking, no, these are all wrong, we got to fix it. We're going to have new politicians or a new economic system or something. If we keep doing that, we're missing the calling, right? We're
Right.
basically still trying to build our house of cards and keep wondering why it keeps falling down. Uh, it's going to keep falling down.
Mhm.
It's supposed to.
Yes. Well, and that's the source of so much suffering, isn't it? The fact that it's supposed to fall down, it's designed to fall down. We need it to fall down, but we don't want it to fall
But we
down.
don't want it to fall down. No, no,
We'll do
meow,
anything.
meow. Anything. We'll cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll even elect buffoons to public office.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll prop it up however we can. And I love that you mentioned that this is everyone's destiny. Literally, this is
Literally.
everyone's destiny to take the hero's journey to experience this kind of growth. Now, with all of us collectively as a world, as a society, reaching that heart chakra point of beginning to break open. Now, in your experience, does this mean that there are more people choosing the hero's journey? Well, it's not, they don't really choose it, but they're accepting it and embarking on it, maybe in spite of themselves. Are there more people doing that now?
Yeah. In spite of themselves, they don't realize it yet, right?
Mhm.
Some have, right? Some like yourself have realized, okay, this is it. It's a breakdown. It's a total breakdown, and I don't want it to happen. Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me, but not my will, but thine be done. There's a surrender there. But
Sure.
for most, it starts out as a journey of personal development. I'm going to
Mhm.
grow, right? They're embracing the growth of it, but they still think that something awaits them, some kind of beautiful material utopia awaits for them, where they're going to understand the law of attraction and how they're going to have the life of their dreams.
Mm.
They don't question that maybe the life of their dreams is the very thing that's killing them,
Right.
right? That isn't your destiny, right? And for the,
Yes.
it was, I think it was Plato who said, an unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we're kind of doing. We're trying to gain this power to manifest everything we want, and never questioning the wants themselves.
Hmm.
The movie
Yes.
The Secret, 14 years ago, right? 2006 it came out. I probably about 3 years ago I watched it again, and I was just really struck by the fact that from beginning to end, the thing was all about what you want, what I can get,
Well,
what
I can
I
get.
can get. Not
Yeah.
one mention of manifesting. How about universal health care? How about ending poverty? How about making sure everybody's fed and taken care of? Not one word about that, right?
Right.
It's all having the life of my dreams. And of course,
Yes.
that's how it was sold for all those years. And it's not a dismissal. Yes, definitely there's something to it,
Mhm.
but but if all you're going to do is give a metaphysical power to a madman, you're just going to make a mess, or somebody who's completely selfish or narcissistic.
Mhm. And maybe
Uh, uh,
every someone that's all of that combined,
yeah, and all of that.
for
Yes.
example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I remember I watched that movie again recently, and you're absolutely right. It's about me, me, me. Now that I can get anything I want,
Yes.
the relationship of my dreams in that case, right? And there's so many people that want the Mercedes, so well, and clearly they're ultimately out of luck on that.
Yeah. Yeah. They're out of luck on that. And if if the truth of the matter is, if they actually got it, if the universe really gave that to them, it would be the worst thing in the world that could possibly happen to them. It would make their ego stronger. It would make their attachment to things stronger. Uh, it would make their sense of benefiting me stronger. Their sense of superiority, that I can do this and you can't, stronger. All of the qualities that we should be abandoning get amplified if the universe was to start handing you everything you wanted. Unless there's one way in which it should be done, that the universe did give you everything you wanted. So you're completely drowning in this stuff, right? Every little thought you had, oh, here it is, right? To actually see what you're doing, right? Stephen Wright put it, you can't have it all. Where would you put it?
No, that's a good question. Yes.
Yeah, if we were in, they say, be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. And we don't know what we're asking for.
Mhm.
We're standing in this place of feeling lack and need, and we try to imagine something external that would meet that need and make me feel whole, right?
Yeah.
And therein lies the fundamental illusion. Nothing external can fill up that hole. Only you can. And the a life spent in the pursuit of those things is an unexamined life, and that's a life not worth living. It's a waste. It's a waste of air. And guess what? You're going to get to do it again. This one's over. Reboot.
Yes.
Recycle. All right, let's try this again.
All right. Yeah, different country this time, different economic bracket for you this time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Take
Let's see what happens.
5,325. Click.
Yes. Yes.
At it
Yeah.
again,
He'll
are
get
you?
it. He'll get it any millennia now.
Right. Yes, and it's just so interesting that we've arrived, because clearly we have arrived at a tipping point, and as you put it, it's a very spiritually demanding time,
Yes.
because there's so many people that are collectively arriving at this point right now. It seems like more than any time, well, that I can remember.
Yeah. More than any time that I can remember, more than any time that I've ever learned about in history.
Yeah.
It never before has it been the entire world. It's the entire world,
This entire
because we're
world.
all so interconnected.
Mhm.
And because of international travel and stuff, COVID wasn't localized. It was on the next plane out of Wuhan, right?
Yeah.
And you can't. There's no way you can really stop that kind of stuff. You can't predict it. I mean, there's things you can do, but look, God's sitting up there going, okay, COVID, all right, you got a vaccine. How about locust? Boom, right? There's no end. There's no end to this, right? Because we keep trying to build our Tower of Babel, and it keeps getting knocked down. Oh no, I got to build it stronger. I'm going to sink the foundation deeper, and it keeps getting knocked down.
Mhm.
And this is the reality that this is what it's forcing us to look inside,
Mhm. Yes.
right? And I'm a petulant little kid too, right?
Totally.
I don't want to eat my spinach, right?
Oh, you don't? Oh, all
I
right.
do now.
All right.
I do now. I love it now, but
All right.
at the time, yeah, potatoes, butter.
Mm, yeah. Chicken
But
tenders with
chicken.
ketchup.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I just wanted that in candy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I keep hoping God is going to do, or the genie of the universe, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's just going to be doling out everything I want. And what would that all would that do? All that would do is make you a spoiled kid.
Right.
You'd be a brat.
Hmm.
Maybe a brat with a mansion, but you'd be a brat.
Yes. A brat with a mansion and a Mercedes, and I don't know, maybe a $10,000 suit, but basically a brat in need of the next gummy bear.
The next gummy bear. Yeah.
Uh,
The next thing.
mhm.
I need the next thing. I need the next thing. I need the next thing.
Right.
And that really is how that works. And that's been shown. That's been demonstrated
Yes.
psychologically that is never satisfied. And I mean, the Buddhists and Advaitists have been talking about that for literally millennia,
Hmm.
right? That thread of dissatisfaction, that hungry ghost, cannot be quenched. There's nothing that can quench it.
Right. Yes. And I think that for listeners who may not be familiar with the term hungry ghost, that it's
Right.
perfect what you just mentioned. Yeah, would
Yeah.
you say some more about what that is?
Yeah. It's a Buddhist metaphor, right? It's an image. It's like a mythological figure, right?
Right.
And there are these kind of ghostly beings.
Mhm.
They have enormous heads and mouths. They have enormous bellies, right? A huge appetite, but their necks are thinner than a human hair.
Yeah.
So they can't actually swallow anything they consume. And so they're forever in this place of yearning, of wanting, of desiring, and they can never be satisfied. And they just kind of float from place to place. No, no anchor, nothing solid. And it's such a perfect image for
Yeah.
that insatiable character inside of all of us, which is our modern name for it is the ego.
Mhm.
The ego is an insatiable energy within you.
Right. Yeah, and I think insatiable is exactly right. It's desire. It's always wanting the next object. So here we are collectively at this space where there are enough of us that realize something's wrong.
Yeah.
So would you share with the listeners what has worked for you to move beyond this space in your own experience?
Well, I should point out that it was not an easy trek, you know.
Yeah.
We live in a very materialistic culture. I grew up at a
Mhm.
very materialistic time. I grew up in the United States at the time in the 50s and into the 60s, when it was just assumed that God has shed His grace on thee, that this is the way it was always going to be, the way it should be. It was going to be everything was wonderful. The next generation would always have better than the previous generation. And then in the 60s, I was a hippie protesting the Vietnam War. Then came the oil crisis, when the Arab countries realized, hey, this is our oil. Screw you. We've been stealing it from for decades. Um, and all of a sudden, you know what? We're going to take control over that now. And they formed OPEC, and they had us up against the wall. Um, and the whole, oops, sorry, and the whole thing just started to fall apart.
Right.
Um, and then I watched. I watched as the people who are living, working for corporations and the like, expecting that it was a lifetime job, are getting laid off, right?
Sure.
And I just watched this entire world change in front of my eyes. And so because of the tumult of the 60s and my own experience, my own personal experiences, that idea of an expectation of a material utopia, um, didn't have the same kind of depth. and I got hungry for spirituality. And at first I was kind of the spirituality, the more new thought, metaphysical kind of thing, where you could manifest your desires. There was a little bit more morality in it, so it wasn't all just unbridled consumption. That
Mhm.
there was some humanity in it, but it was still the same kind of thing. But little by little, I began to discover the deeper spiritual truths, primarily in Advaita Vedanta and in
Okay.
Zen Buddhism,
Yeah.
and these deeper meanings, where I learned the actual meaning of suffering was that sense of and the way Buddha used the term suffering, that term dukkha, he was not referring to the kind of extreme misery we might associate it with. He
Right.
was talking about an underlying discontent that ran through every single human being, and and that discontent was the suffering, right?
Mhm.
Whereas extreme suffering was just kind of a crescendo on that. But this was there the entire time, and it manifests itself as this perpetual seeking, this perpetual dissatisfaction. And so I just kind of followed along in Advaita and in Buddhism, uh, first questioning the nature of the desires themselves. Where did they come from? Coming to see, if I got this desire quenched, would I actually be satisfied? And I could see in my own life that that had never happened. There was a momentary relief followed by the arising of the next desire,
Right.
right? As they refer to in Hinduism as Shiva's wheel, right? It's just this endless cycle over and over again. I said, okay, so obviously the satisfying of desire is not the answer. That just puts you in perpetual motion,
Yeah.
which, by the way, unfortunately, is what Abraham Hicks teaches. That's what life is about. Just the desire comes up, you shift your vibration, you get it fulfilled, and then the next one comes up. That's their version of life, is just this endless cycle, right? To me,
Mhm.
that's hell. I regard
Yeah.
that as hell.
Mhm.
And what is the hell fires but the burning of a desire that can't be quenched,
Yeah.
right? So where's the quenching come from? Where's the end of suffering? And in Buddhism, he said it perfectly: the Four Noble Truths of suffering. There is suffering, which everyone can say, "Yep, check, that's a fact," right?
Yes.
He said, then he say, "There's a cause of suffering. There's an end to suffering, and there's a means to that end."
Yeah.
And the cause of suffering was has been popularly interpreted in Buddhism as desire, and of course, yes, right? Desire is, if I'm not desiring, I'm right. I'm perfectly content, right? It is, however, life is desire. Take desire away from life, and life, it'd all be done. You and I are here because our parents had a desire for each other, and and had a desire to feed us, right?
Happily, yes.
Right. So if you look, desire is the motivation of life itself. So here's this situation where we have desire. We have to transcend desire, and yet you can't transcend desire. This is the Buddhist catch 22, right? So that's a misunderstanding of it. It was not to get rid of the desiring, but the one who is desiring,
Yeah.
not the suffering, but to be free of the sufferer.
Yes.
It was our identification with it that made us dependent on it. And so we formed an image of ourselves, a self-image of someone lacking, needing something. We then take this identity on as ourselves, we act it out, we walk through the entire thing, never questioning whether or not, is that really me? That, and I discovered that me that is so hungry, the hungry ghost, so desirous, was the me that got created from that original trauma where I could not be myself. And what I was really feeling was not a desire for a thing, but a desire to be myself. to be free of this one that I had the character I had taken on in order to survive, gotten lost in the character, forgotten who I really was, and yet that craving inside was simply the real me saying, "Come home,"
Right.
and that's what turned it around.
Mhm. Yeah. And when you finally had that experience, how old were you? Where were you? What was that like?
Well, it developed over time.
Hmm.
Uh, it was probably 15 years ago when it hit me so fully
Okay.
that it just it just immediately penetrated absolutely everything I did and said. Just that the wisdom of the flow. The first time it happened was when I was 19, and that's when I was shown clearly, completely. I mean, I was just a drugged out hippie rock and roll drummer. I was not interested in spirituality
Okay.
in the slightest. Um, and it was just kind of because I was just at such dire straits. I was just completely lost in the sauce. That it was almost like an intervention, something breaking my heart open. And what it showed me was the original pure me that hadn't been touched, and this whole slew of conditioning, and that these weren't touching, that the real me was still there. Now, it took me decades to really understand and separate out all of the conditioning for me. I hadn't even heard the word conditioning at that point. Remember, this is
Okay.
1971, right?
Oh,
Course in Miracles hadn't been written,
no.
right? This is like there was no self help, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that term didn't exist. There was a psychology shelf in the bookstore, right?
Mm, mm.
And that was the extent of anything that had to do with that. It would be another 10 years before that whole thing began, before anybody had heard of Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, or that crowd. Um, so really developed over a long time as I began to understand more, and I looked in psychology, and I looked at all sorts of different things, metaphysics and New Thought churches, and I'm sure I would have read A Course in Miracles cover to cover had it been around. I
Sure.
read other things, um, uh, but little by little, the whole picture started to become clear,
Yeah.
until finally, in basically a Zen retreat, the entire structure just collapsed. I said the whole thing was a fraud. The whole thing was a phony. That's not who I am. And it's not like it's come back. I'm not a Buddha, right? It's not like it's,
Mm.
it doesn't come back and trick me. I have to be vigilant about it. Um,
Yeah.
um, but that sense back in 1971 of that original innocence, that never left me. And then about 15, 16 years ago, yeah, probably about that, it just kind of broke off. I had been even though I'd had these experiences, I was still looking for a truth, right? That like there was like this true position, this one position that would make all the other positions clear. um, the truth, right? The truth of
Yes.
truths,
Mm.
all capital letters in the sky, angels and stuff.
Mhm.
It was in that moment that I realized there was no such thing, that I myself was the truth, and that I was
Yeah.
nobody in particular,
Mhm.
and I completely let go of holding on to a position. And at that point, I just ceased to be me, and I became this flow. And and that's what it means to like step out of your identity.
Right.
I was no longer GP. GP still here. I function through GP, but I am not him.
Yeah.
I am this indescribable consciousness that permeates it. It's not localized. It isn't any given place. Um, it appears localized. It appears to be moving through this body, but that very same conscious energy is who I'm talking to.
Mhm. Exactly. Right. And it's who's listening to us wherever they may be.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's the same consciousness. Uh,
Yeah.
and then you let go of all of our identifications, all of the people you thought you were. And the most beautiful thing happens. As a result, you're always showing up in every circumstance with total innocence and openness. You don't show up as somebody. You're not showing up with an agenda. You're fully present.
Mhm.
And in that full presence, not being anybody in particular, all the infinite resources available to you are there to be fully present and deal with whatever happens in the moment,
Yeah, right. Whatever that may be.
whatever it might
Yes.
be. And it's so much fun that you don't really care.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Would you speak to that, to the fun component of this? Because I think this is something that people think that spirituality, either they think it's rainbows, unicorns, and a nice toasty cappuccino with a couple of pumps of whatever syrup you like,
That's
whatever, whatever that is. Either they think it's that, or they think it's extraordinary suffering. So, would you say some more about the playfulness and the laughter?
well, the end of suffering, right? What's the end of suffering, man? Life becomes a celebration,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Everything becomes incredibly beautiful. Everything becomes is just bathed in this light. I mean, the face of a child, a puppy dog, a flower. It becomes extraordinary. A plastic bag blowing in the wind. It becomes a thing of beauty. Life, you cease having an argument with life because there's no person there to say it should be different. And so as a
Yeah.
result, every moment is an absolute joy. They call it bliss, they call it ananda, but it's
Mhm.
not the kind of, it's not the kind of bliss that people think of, which is an extreme happiness, which is experienced as well, but it is a complete embrace of life as it is. And so it is fun. Every day is fun. Every moment is fun. Even the moments of deep grief and deep loss, which are going to touch your life and inevitably must, there will be a peace about it. There'll be an appreciation of life because the level of grief I feel about a loss is absolutely identical and reciprocal to the amount of love I felt for that which had been lost. So I have to have both. I, this is the nature because everything is impermanent. Everything does come and go, right? But if I truly totally embrace it and it's coming, I have to embrace it and it's going, and that will leave me with grief. It'll leave me with that. But at the same time, that'll leave me with the juice of life. I'm alive. This is what human life is. I'm alive, really alive.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful quote from Joseph Campbell. He said that people say they're looking for a meaning or purpose in life. He says, I don't think they're looking for meaning in life. I think what people are looking for is the experience of being alive.
Mhm. Yes.
Perfect.
Mhm. Yeah,
Did it
that's it.
again, Joe.
Well put, right? The experience of being alive.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, GP, this has been amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of your journey here with us. And we'll do a special encore presentation here this month as well. So you'll be back for another show. And
Yay.
absolutely. Oh, yeah. All the listeners, please don't fear. We're coming back. We got the goods. We got the goods. We got your gummy bears. We got your cappuccino lattes. We're cappuccino and latte are different. I guess that shows you what I know. Very
Yeah,
little
yeah,
on that.
cappuccinos. Oh, there's
That's a different.
macchiatos. I mean, there's a million of them now. Yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll be back with all of that. So grab your favorite coffee drinks and be sure to tune in to part two. GP, any last thoughts here before we wrap this segment up today?
I just like reminding people if there's just even an inkling in this direction of a yearning for a spirituality that that is tough, right? Not fine china you put on the shelf and just take off and don't let the kids have, right? The everyday stuff, right, that gets knocked off the table and broken. That's a spirituality that's gritty, that's earthy, that's real. If there's anything in there that resonates for you, you've been called and chosen. It is a blessing. It is a blessing. And just one little extra warning that because you have been, there's no turning back. So don't try.
Yes, I can attest to that. you're screwed.
You're screwed. You're in, buddy. It's like the
Yeah,
mafia. No, there's no way out. Sorry.
no. Yeah, if you try to get out, they're going to have a meeting in the desert, and yeah, and you're supposed to come unarmed to that meeting.
Yes,
Sorry,
right.
sorry, everybody. Yeah, all right. I love this. Yeah, gritty, earthy, and real. And GP, if people want to find out more about you, where can they reach you?
gpwalsh.com. It's all there now, thanks to a lot of work, and the new site. It's all functioning now.
And yes, I can attest to this. It's a wonderful new site, very really nice, and it is indeed all there. So GP, thank you so much for joining me here. This has been a pleasure, and I look forward to talking with you again very soon here. As this has been
Thanks, Tomas.
You're most welcome. This has been Decide to Transform with my very special guest, GP Walsh. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.